Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live. My co-host Wes Defender is off this week and hope to see him back next week. Our guest is Craig Lukacs from the Lacawac Sanctuary. And for those of you who haven't seen Craig on our program before, the sanctuary is a lake virtually adjacent to Lake Wallenpaupack, and yet as different as two bodies of water could possibly be, both in size and water quality and in use. Now, Craig, Wallenpaupack is a man-made lake,
right,
created as a hydroelectric project by what was the Pennsylvania Power and Light Company.
That's correct.
Way back in the days when they used actual steam shovels to get it done.
Yep.
The lake on which the sanctuary is set up is a lake that was formed by glacier?
It's a glacial lake, yep, that's correct.
Which makes it extremely unique.
It is unique. It's unique because it's the southernmost pristine glacial lake in the hemisphere, meaning that its watershed has been protected since as long as we can remember by the people who built their home there and stuff like that. So no encroachment from any type of motorboats or anything like that. So where Wallenpaupack is completely different.
Nor from housing, really. Of course, Lake Wallenpaupack is surrounded by cottages and homes.
Right.
You only have the one, I guess, facility on the property.
We have our lodge, which back in the day when it was built by the Connell family of Scranton, they put their septic system outside the watershed. They knew that was their drinking water. So ever since then, it's been protected.
It's so unique to have something so well preserved, thankfully, because some people were thinking ahead way back in the day.
Right, yeah, and we can trace our lineage for that lake all the way back to the Lenape Indians through the William Penn family had the property. So it's a very unique property. There's only been about 5-6 owners of the property that we can record.
So was this a hunting ground for Native Americans?
It was. We actually have one of their canoes in our lake still. There were 2 of them. We rose up one, but obviously they didn't know how to protect it, but we actually have one still buried. They would bury their canoes in the lake and then take it back up when they were ready to use them again.
Well, this is a dugout canoe.
Yes.
Wow, that's talk about something that out of history, and yet there it is, right from our own backyard.
Yeah, a little tidbit of information about our lake. So.
Yeah, absolutely great. We'd like to talk a little bit about how the whole acreage and the lake is being used, because although it is not a recreational facility as Lake Wallenpaupack has become, the same uniqueness is being utilized because people are invited on the property. But before we get to that, there's one particular event, and it's why we really want to have you in here every year, that is unique, because it's, I guess, a fundraiser in a sense.
It is.
And one of the things about protecting a property like this is that it's quite a job, and it's not inexpensive.
Yeah.
So there is a lake-to-lake, here we go with Wallenpaupack and your facility again. There's a lake-to-lake walk. Is it a run as well?
It's a run. It's
run
an 8K
as well,
run.
and a dog walk as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
Because you're inviting folks with it. Tell us a little bit about this. This is going on for a few years now.
Yes, this is our 5th annual lake-to-lake run and walk. Obviously, it gets its name because people run between Lake Lacawac, our lake, and Lake Wallenpaupack. We also, a couple years ago, added a dog walk, and then we have a 5K walk. So basically the walk is about a 5K, about 3 miles. So it's just through the woods. And then the 8K is the actual timed competition run that people participate in for their best time and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, there's a lot of people into that.
Yeah, and it's unique because it's an 8K, which is about 5 miles, 5.1 miles. There's not a lot of 8Ks in the area. They're usually 5K or 10K.
Yes.
So we kind of are in between there. So we've been doing this for 5 years now, and it supports the education programs at Lacawac and the upkeep of our property because we are a nonprofit.
Right. Now, is this trail between the two lakes? Is it, how would you describe it? Is it sort of, I don't know, use the term like a dirt road type of?
Yeah, so we use our main road, which is one of our trails, down to the lodge. and around, not around, but down to Lake Lacawac. And then we have about a 3.1 mile trail that goes down to Lake Wallenpaupack. And that's it's a challenging race because it is a decline down to the lake because we're higher than Lake Wallenpaupack. And then obviously if you go down, eventually you have to come back up.
Back up again.
So, yeah, so it is, people find it by the time they get to like mile 4, they're pretty...
The tail end is back uphill then.
Yeah, it is.
But is it comfortable for a walk?
Yes. So it's on one of our trails. So most people, it's on a graveled trail. It's one of our gravel trails. So people find it very comfortable.
Okay.
And for the walk, you don't have to go the whole distance. You can, it's not timed, so it's just to get people out and to enjoy nature that day.
When is the run, walk, and what is the cost for I want to say admission, the registration?
Right. So the race and the walk is scheduled for Sunday, October 14th at 9:30 in the morning. The cost right now to run is $25 donation and a $15 donation for the walk or the dog walk. And participants get a little bit of a swag. We have water bottles this year, metal water bottles for all the participants, and we even have some little gifts for the dogs too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Has it been a major fundraiser for you?
It is. We have 2 major fundraisers, one in the summer, one in the fall. This is our one of our major fundraisers because it's not only just a fundraiser, but it gets people to the property. People who haven't been to Lacawac and they get to see the property.
I think that is the big surprise for so many people that may be very familiar with Lake Wallenpaupack and don't even realize that this other facility is really so close by and open to the public in restricted manners, of course.
Right. Yeah, it's open to the public 7 days a week during sunrise and sunset. And the best part of it is that, from Scranton, we're only like 30 minutes away. We're right off the interstate. So it's not hard for people to find us, although people in the area that live around us always say, oh, I've heard about it, but I've never been there. And, we always say, well, why don't you come on and visit us sometime? So
that's the old living in New York, not seeing the Empire State Building phenomena.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and yet it is a local treasure. We spoke during your last visit about how it's not just assumed that everything is staying the same there with regard to the pristine condition of the water and everything. You actually do regularly scheduled testing and such.
Right. We actually have cut quite a bit of programming. We do research on our lake, so we're constantly monitoring the parameters of the lake, meaning like pH levels, oxygen levels, the temperature of the water. There's a school, Miami University, how that measures those parameters like every 15 minutes.
Oh, gee.
It profiles the lake, stops every meter. We have some buoys, which we call, that are floating stations in the lake that are measuring different types of things like weather and wind and stuff like that. So we're doing that. We also do it for other lake associations too. So we actually work with the lake associations to help them monitor the water quality, because everybody who lives on a lake is concerned about, can I fish? What is it like to swim in our lake? Are there any unhealthy things like algae blooms and stuff like that? So we want to make sure that their lake is as clean as it can be for them.
Sure. Now, as you do that regular testing, have you seen any major changes over, let's say, the past 5 or 10 years?
On our lake, yes.
You have?
Yes. The major change is the temperature, the surface temperature of the lake has changed. People say that that's partly due to the changes in climate that are happening across the United States and the world. And when you compare our lake, we compare our lake with other lakes across the world as part of a network of lakes, global lakes. And we've been noticing not only is our lake temperature changing, but their temperatures are changing.
Increasing, Craig? Or?
Yes. And we noticed that because of the winters. When I first started about 5 years ago, our lake was solid frozen for the whole winter. Now the ice is on and off all winter. So that there's something going on in terms of the climate, or whether it's the seasons are changing a little bit. But definitely what has happened in our lake when I first started is definitely not the same as what's happening
Certainly
now.
evidence of climate change, and it would be very hard to dispute that that's happening. You may dispute all you want about what's causing
Right.
that, whether it is just a natural phenomenon or whether it is something that that man has influenced. Yours would be a good testing ground because of the limited effect of man
Yeah.
on the water, and on not only on the water but on the land around the water as
Right.
well.
That's why our lake's an ideal lake for that type of testing, because we do not use any outside encroachment on it. So it's just basically whatever's atmospheric is part of is what's doing that to our lake. So that's kind of why it's a test lake for a lot of other lakes.
Sure.
A sample lake.
Sure. How is the property used on an? You mentioned you can come there any day from dawn till dusk.
Right.
How is it used by individuals? Do they have to have reservations to come there? What can they do when they are there?
Now, we're a public facility, so we're open to the public, and everybody can come at any time to use our trails, to have a picnic and that type of stuff. We offer public programs, obviously, specific scheduled programs throughout the year for the public to come in to learn about things in nature. Like this past couple weeks, we had a mushroom hike. We have a fall foliage hike coming up. So there's a lot of things going on. The hikes are popular. We do animal presentations and stuff like that. So we want people to connect to nature and come and use the property.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people would have liked to have taken advantage of the mushroom checking, because you see mushrooms all over, but to a novice like myself, what is edible and what is, because the two extremes are there.
We had over 100 people for that hike.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty big.
Yeah. Are you trying to add additional programs each year, or do you bring the same ones back?
We bring the popular ones back, obviously. The mushroom hike, the birds of prey, which is a very popular program.
Oh.
We typically bring the larger programs back because they get a lot of time with people who haven't seen those programs, and they're popular. We try to add other programs in here and there, but we try to stick to what we know is works for us.
Sure, and you have a track record now with some of those, like those you just mentioned. What about efforts to bring school kids there to see this? Because here again, it's the kind of thing where I think a lot of youngsters would say, gee, I'd love to go to a lake, but they think of going to the lake in terms of jumping in to swim and in terms of getting in the boat and maybe fishing and such. It's good for them to learn about the pristine conditions of a lake like yours and things, but I think you've got to make the effort to draw them in.
Yeah. We actually do every year have field trips from K to 12th grade. And the neat thing is, this year's exciting for us because we just purchased our founder's home, which is in the middle of our property. It wasn't ours. It was on less than an acre. We actually just purchased that to become our new environmental ed center.
Is this the lodge you spoke of?
No, the lodge is a separate historic building. It's on the National Registry. This is a separate home that was built in the 50s.
Okay.
And now we're going to be using it for our environmental ed center. We have a lot of work to do on it. We have a lot of construction that we'll be raising funds for in the near future. But we can start using it now to have our public programs, to have our hikes start from there, but also for the K-12 programs to use it as well. It's going to be our nature center, so that's exciting. And so going back to the K-12, we bring the students there to do all types of programs about animal adaptations. The high school students work with actually water quality, so it's a very high level class where the students do hypotheses before they get there about the water quality, come test the water, go under microscopes, and then figure out. A lot of
hands-on.
They're all the field trips, even K-12 are hands-on. There, we're going out into the field, overturning rocks, looking for species and salamanders, and so even the little kids get to have hands-on, and we're actually taking them right into the forest. We rain or shine, we usually do our field trips because nature doesn't stop.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's you may hit a storm, but if you're going to do the investigative efforts, you've got to do it with the weather.
Yeah. So they're neat programs. Over the years, we've seen, about I would say. We're about 5,000 students now, or 5,000 hands, we say, about 2,500 students, sorry. But we've increased that over the years, and we keep increasing it. So come through in the spring season.
So schools bring buses in?
They do.
To you?
Yes.
And that's, are you always looking to invite more in?
Oh yeah, we invite any school, any teacher that is listening could call us to inquire about what field trips we can do for their students.
Sure. Now, you have used the term a couple times, we do this with them, we do with, who's the we?
We have a staff of educators. Obviously, I'm not going out into the field, but our educators who are, seasoned in the field, who have education degrees, they're the ones who are going out with the kids, with the students, to show them the hands-on activities.
It would be really great if the folks at Lake Wallenpaupack could have a bus coming over on a regular basis as well,
Right.
saying, by the way, here's the other side of a recreational lake. What does it, I mean, realistically, and it's not a personal question because it's a nonprofit group, but what does it take financially to keep something like this in order, keep it operational?
A lot of grant writing, a lot of, for our programs, is the grants, a lot of public donations. Membership, we do a membership drive every year. We do an annual fund drive. Our special events like the Lake to Lake Run. We do a farm to plate dinner. So all those things combined keep us afloat, So.
Yeah, and you're talking some big dollars that are needed, so grants are certainly important. Have you been getting those on a regular basis?
We have. That's my job. That's my job as a fundraiser, is to write grants and get all the funds that we can. And now that we're doing construction and building, onto a new existing building, that's a lot of work and a lot of grant writing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these things are important, and certainly one of them is the Lake to Lake Run and Walk and Dog Walk that we've been talking about. The dates again on that, Craig?
It's October 14th at 9:30 a.m.
9:30 in the morning. And I guess, what does that take in terms of getting everybody out and everybody back? A couple hours?
No, maybe the slowest runner is about 45 minutes or so.
Okay.
The walkers, yeah, it could be an hour for them till they do their 5K portion, their 3 miles. But yeah, it's less than an hour or about an hour. So
can they, anyone interested in partaking of that, can they register in advance?
we prefer people to register in advance. People can show up that day. Obviously, we get a lot of people who show up that day because they want to see what the weather's like. In October,
true.
Whether it's sunny, rainy, snowing, I don't know. You don't know around here. But people can register in advance at our website, lacawac.org. It's right on the front page. That's the preference because then we know how many people to expect. But people are welcome to show up that day as well too.
Okay, and I guess that would be the same site then for finding out what kind of programs are being offered.
Mm-hmm.
And is there something every month in terms of a program for the public that they can come in and take advantage of, or just about every month?
Every month we have at least one public program where people can come in and partake in. A lot of the programs are free or small cost to the general public. If they're a member, they're usually free. So one reason why to take a membership out to Lacawac and stuff like
Sure,
that.
and then you're helping to support all the efforts there year-round when you can become a member. Well, what about that term year-round? You mentioned that you would have the run and such, or some of these investigative programs, even if the rain's coming down, but you get some tough winters up that way as well. So what do you do through the winter months?
We keep our road plowed and cindered, and as long as people can get up there, people come. So people hike, people snowshoe, people enjoy the winter up there.
So it is open. How about cross-country skiing, or is that impractical?
We don't have the best conditions for cross-country skiing, but people have. On the property, we've seen the tracks.
Just don't bring snowmobiles, because
No, we don't allow snowmobiles, but yeah, as long as people can get to the property, they can utilize it. So
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. How much, in terms of staff, do you have a large staff that's there?
No, we don't have a lot of staff. We have about 7 staff members. Most of them are educators. We have a director of science and research who's a PhD level scientist who oversees all our science programs. So we're lucky to have that caliber of education on our staff. Most of our educators have master's degrees. So
I mentioned maintaining the land, but I'm going to have to believe that the technology involved in preserving this property is
Yeah.
something we don't necessarily see.
No,
But it's got to be
no.
pretty extensive.
We have a laboratory on property, which we have very high-tech equipment in, and most people don't see that, know that we're doing all that kind of work. So students do, but not always the general public.
I know I asked you once before, and you touched on it, but I'm not sure it's the same thing. Didn't the school district up that way, didn't they have a program where they had students come over to do water testing, or was that Wallenpaupack itself perhaps?
Wallenpaupack has a program like that, but we've basically worked with all the school districts now. Most of them are bringing several classes in every year, so to us. Yeah.
And I'm also kind of always surprised to hear you talking about starting from kindergarten on up, because I can see where high school students would be able to come in and certainly take advantage of the programs that are there, but how do you get the real little kids involved?
The little ones are fun, because some of the kids, as they get older, are like, oh, do I have to do this? But the little kids want to get dirty. They want to, go out there and just have fun. So, but we try to make it fun, but as well as the time that they learn. So, yeah, they're definitely learning through that fun time, getting dirty and stuff.
And
like
I guess that's really the important time to hit them when they're
Yeah.
at the young age. Because you're talking
Right.
about, we all hear so many things about environmental concerns, and yet still, our river group up here just with 2 weeks ago did a cleanup of a section where they're trying to increase the size of a local trail, and you still find the tires and the junk that's dumped in the water. Now, what about, are you spring fed? Is that like spring fed?
No, it's a watershed fed, which means the water that comes from the watershed on the land around us, and when it rains, that's what keeps the lake fed.
Well, what about infiltration of things from that?
We control all the land around it, the whole watershed.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have control of the watershed as well.
So it would only be anything natural that would be occurring in.
Yeah, we're not putting anything, no pollutants in that whole. It's a very protected zone for us.
Yeah,
It's highly protected, I should say.
Technically speaking, and I mean I don't encourage it, but could you drink that water?
Oh yeah, it's very clear. I mean, when you take samples of Lake Wallenpaupack on our water, I mean they're night and day when you look at them. So.
And that's not to downgrade Lake Wallenpaupack,
No,
because
but-
as a recreational facility, I'm
Yes.
sure it's probably one of the tops in the state.
Yes.
But I guess the difference in purity is
It's
substantial.
It is. So people, it's definitely good drinking water. So
Is there a fish population in your lake?
there are. People always wonder how the fish got there, but
How did the fish get there?
it's left over, from when the glaciers melted and there was fish kind of swimming around, but also birds kind of like have the eggs attached to them. If they were in the water, they kind of drop them in the lake and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, people are even surprised. We have freshwater jellyfish in our lake. They're not the jellyfish that you think of in the sea where they're big and stuff, but they're small, they're tiny. But we definitely have bass in our lake for sure, and a bunch of other species of fish.
I've seen the Fish Commission go around and test various watersheds, lakes and rivers with these electronic probes where they can actually get an idea of the number of fish and things, and the types. Do you do anything like that?
We do some research. Some schools like Drexel University comes up and does some fish surveys for us. So
Yeah, what kind of fish have been found in your lake?
the majority is bass. Yeah, so it's mostly bass.
And you get rather large sizes there.
They're very large. Yeah.
Now you're talking to a fisherman who
Now people are like,
wishes I could.
They want to know if they can fish in our lake. I'm like, sorry, but
Yeah.
they would be good catches if you can fish in there.
No, that's excellent. And again, it shows the quality of
Right.
of the water, because when we start to look at some of the rivers around here, certainly the Susquehanna and the Lackawanna, which really had bad reputations over so many years, are really a lot cleaner than
Yes.
people give them.
People are starting to care for their waterways and their lakes these days. So, and that's part of our mission, is to make sure people are aware that there's no new water, is our phrase, right? The water, once it's polluted, is polluted. There's,
No.
we
That's
have
a good
technology.
point.
So, yeah.
That's a good point, because even the smallest disturbance has, if you excuse the expression, ripple effects for a long time to come.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have the technology to clean up these days, but that's very costly and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
But it definitely has effects. I mean, one of our programs is a watershed program for 4th and 5th grade, where we show them on a topographical map. If you pour this in the watershed, where it goes is basically your water supply. So.
Sure. Well, and we use the Susquehanna as an example again. I guess that ends up the Delaware.
Yeah, it ends up down in near Philadelphia. Like, it's the same thing with the Delaware. I mean, when we do something happens up here in the Pocono region and the Delaware River, Philadelphia is affected by it.
Sure,
downstream.
sure.
So.
And I believe a community like I'm almost positive it's Danville still uses the river for drinking water supplies. And when you start to envision the fact that upstream you had the coal mines and such, and the pollution that came with those, and you start thinking, gee, that's, of course, the water's treated before it's actually get into the system. But boy, wouldn't it be great if we had more facilities like yours with the pristine conditions?
Yeah, it's a dream, right?
What do you see as the future of your efforts there?
The future really is to really train as many people as possible, to get the awareness out there about what we can do.
Yeah.
That's the future. For us, we're hoping that we just keep growing and keep educating the public and bringing more people there.
How many people come through on a yearly basis in terms of the programs now, rather than just visiting?
Well, just visiting programs is a few thousand, right? I mean, a couple hundred to 1,000. I mean, but overall, when you add up those people versus the school kids and the general public, we're talking about 15,000 visitors a year.
That's fantastic. So. Well, the big event coming up is the Lake to Lake Run, Walk, Dog Walk, and again, the date and time?
It's October 14th, 9:30 a.m. in the morning.
Well, come on out and support that. You're going to be supporting a great cause. And Craig, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me again.
Seeing you. Glad to have you. Mark McGlory, thank you for your work behind the scenes. We'll see Rusty next week. I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Till we see you then, here's hoping all your news is good.